Hello, welcome to Risal Reads. I'm Deja, and today we are going to do another recent read. October was definitely a mediocre month in terms of my reading. I had a lot of like three and a half, maybe 3 star reads, and like one 2 star read and one like 4 star read. So it was not the best, but it also wasn't the worst, I guess. I don't know. It was just kind of a disappointing month, especially coming from September where I had a 5 star read and a 4.5 star read. So just definitely a disappointing month. But let's go ahead and get into the books that I read. The first book that I read for the month was Lost Arc Dreaming. I actually got an arc of this from NetGalley, and I'm ashamed to say that I just got to it, but I'm really trying to at least get to one arc a month because I just have not been reading them. And so I picked this one up for October, and this one was a fairly interesting book. I gave it 3.5 stars because there were elements that I really enjoyed about it, but there was also like other elements that I'm not quite sure how I feel about them. So this book is following a cast of 3 characters, and they are in this like arc, and this arc is a very like connected to the water. Like some of it is underground and other parts of it is above ground. And of course in a story like this you're really like critiquing like class differences. And there is definitely Nigerian influence in this, which is one of the things that I actually really enjoyed about this. It has some elements of the Mami Wata story, which I'm not fairly familiar with, but I know that it is part of Nigerian culture, I believe. It does have like elements of Nigerian history in it as well, and just how like history repeats itself, which is one of the things I really appreciate about like sci-fi, just connecting like the past and the future and just really like tying it in and really just critiquing like things in like a futuristic setting, which I think that this book did very well. Now, in terms of the things that I just kind of didn't really know what to think about them, I feel like there was a lot of things that were introduced in some kind of way, but I just don't know what all of these like elements had to do with like each other. And not to say that they didn't connect, but I don't know what I was supposed to get out of this story, especially because it does end with kind of like an open ending. So I feel like I would have to reread this book just to like kind of see where the author was trying to go with these things. And I struggle with that because usually I really do like open endings. But this one I don't know. Like it just did not land the way that I think it was supposed to for me. And that's not to say that it's not a good story because I did enjoy it. Like it does have some kind of like thriller elements as they're trying to escape from this like flooding stuff that's happening. And of course like the politics and upper class being very like corrupt, like that's in there as well. And like I got those elements. It was just the ending and just like how like the Mami Wata elements were supposed to be like incorporated with, like I'm just not exactly sure. And I don't want to necessarily compare it to the deep, but this book did kind of remind me of the deep because it has those elements of like how do you know like your history and like stuff like that. And I feel like I got the point of the deep more than I got the point of Lost Art Dreaming. And I just don't know if that's just because I'm missing some cultural nuances or something. But the idea of memory, I don't think was explored very well, and I almost wish that it wasn't like included in the story because I think that was like the biggest weakness for me because the ending does deal with like more of like the memory things, which I don't know. It was a good book. I gave it 3.5 stars, like I said, and it's just one that I'm very conflicted about just because I'm not exactly sure of what the point of some of the elements that were included was. So yeah, the next one that I read is One Night, One Bite by Dria Anderson, and this was the group pick for the Love in One Night readathon, I believe that's what's called. And this one, I liked it, but I also wasn't like obsessed with it like a lot of other people. There's a lot of elements that I think could have been done better, but not that it wasn't like done bad. I just think it needed more time to be like fleshed out. I think the problem that I have with like a lot of novellas is that like they try to introduce like a lot of different elements that don't necessarily go with like the main storyline. And in a novella, like you really only have time to really flesh out like one storyline. And I think that this had like interesting elements of like the world. Like I was very interested with like the vampire lore and just like I believe the female main character is like a witch or something. And I thought that it was cool. And then there was also like this extra drama with like the ex-husband, and then drama with like the family, and then just like the things happening within like the vampire and just the paranormal world. And I think that that was like a little bit too much for a novella that was less than like 100 pages. And of course, like you still have like your steamy scenes, which I did skip through because I wasn't that interested in it. But like I don't know, I thought it was fine. I gave it like 3 stars, but like I don't know. I think this would have worked better in a longer form. And I don't know, like I would definitely read more by this author, but I'm just not as obsessed with it as other people. The next one that I read is The Bitter Truth by Shannora Williams, and I read this for Black Thon, and this is a what is this book? Like, is it a I want to say it's like a mystery thriller. This is my second book by Shannora Williams, and I'm just really starting to understand what I should expect from this author. There was definitely a lot of drama, morally gray characters, and just an ending that is just I don't know, kind of wild, but like yeah, it was something else. So this book is following like a cast of like 3 characters. You get 3 perspectives. And like her other book that I read, The Wife Before, this one also has kind of like a dual timelines element to it. And one of the timelines is in the past, of course, and it's following this girl named Bryn who ends up linking with her ex-boyfriend from college. And then in the current timeline, you're following this couple, which is Dominic and I forget the wife's name, but you're following her and Dominic, and they are in kind of a toxic relationship. Like they don't really like each other, but they're staying together because it's a political match and everything. And for one thing, I will say that the characters in this book are definitely morally gray, unlikable. Like, I had a hard time being in Dominic's perspective, especially because there are a lot of like triggering things in this. So definitely check like the content warnings when you are reading this because there was a lot. And Dominic, like I pretty much hated him, and it made it so hard for me to like just read his perspective. And yeah, I absolutely hated him. Like I don't think I've had such a strong reaction to a character in such a long time, and I just like I don't like him at all. I will say that the pacing of this book was better than The Wife Before. I think that The Wife Before had a little bit of like a slog in the middle. I will say that the pacing of this one was a little bit better than The Wife Before, and I did still feel like it was just a little bit too slow in the middle, but it wasn't as bad as I thought that The Wife Before was. And the last thing that I will mention with this is that, like, one of the things that kind of bothered me about this is that since we do get 3 perspectives, like, you're in the character's head, so, like, you know where they are. But there was kind of like a plot twist with one of the main characters that just kind of came out of nowhere, especially because we were in her perspective. And so I was just not really a fan of that because it just kind of came in because I feel like that plot twist was really just included for like the sake of the plot, but not necessarily like the characters. And I'm such a character driven reader that like when it happened, I was just like, what is going on? Like this is kind of out of left field. But I just went with it. Like it was a good time to say that. Like I don't know. I was flipping through the pages, but like I wouldn't say it was necessarily a good time because, like I said, check the content warnings because there was a lot in this. Like there's infidelity, there's domestic violence, there's so much like in this book. So definitely check that if you do decide to pick this up. The next one that I picked up is Before You Go. I have been trying to find a romance that I just really vibe with, and I saw this author on Instagram, and I believe in like her description she was saying that like soft life and everything, which I was like, okay, cool, maybe this will be like a romance author that I vibe with. Um, I picked this up and I don't believe I got like the vibes that I wanted. I knew going in that this was kind of like a relationship in trouble kind of thing. She wants to get married, he doesn't. And so I was just trying to see like how the author would like give me those like angsty feels on like why they couldn't be together or anything, but then also how they're gonna overcome this. And that's not what I got at all. Like there was a lot of drama in this. I hesitate to even call this a romance because there's no happily ever after or happy for now. And I just feel like the characters were just very annoying. And I mean, her family was interesting in terms of just like their views on relationships, but like the main character and the love interest, I guess, like I'm not exactly sure if he is the love interest because of the way that the book ended, but like whatever. It was interesting to see like the kind of family that she came from, but like the main characters were very annoying. I felt like she was very like wish-washy, and I don't know. I didn't get the angsty feels that I wanted from this. I also think that the book could have used a little bit more developmental edits and even just like a regular editor because there was like words missing and stuff like that. And like I'm not knocking it for that because editing is very expensive, but I do think that the story needed work because it just I don't know, it just didn't deliver anything that I thought I was going to get. So yeah, I gave that one 2 stars, unfortunately. The next book that I read was Countess, and this one I picked up because I saw Vina at Miss WOC Reader reading this and talking about it a little bit. And I am definitely in my adult science fiction fantasy bag, so I was like, let me try this because it's Caribbean literature, and I've been trying to find more Caribbean authors in science fiction and fantasy since that is like my go-to genre. So this one was interesting. I would definitely read more by this author. I just feel like I'm kind of disappointed by where this story ended up going. So you're following this woman named Verica, I believe her name is, and she's basically like this world's like police officer. And this group that she is a part of in terms of like culture and ethnicity and everything, they have been oppressed by the people that she's working for and they just are seen as less than. But in order to kind of get like a better life for her and her family, she joins like this little group for them and tries to rise through the ranks in order to be assimilated into their like culture and be accepted. All of that does not go to plan because she ends up being charged for her captain's murder and she ends up going to prison. And from there, I will say that the story is a very something else. Like I thought that this book would be more revenge heavy. I thought it would be like more revolution and everything like that. But I just feel like I didn't get what I wanted from that. Like I'm not saying that the book isn't that, but like I just feel like the book could have ended in a very different way, especially because there was like definitely not like history. There was like a leader named Toussaint, which I think was like a reference to Toussaint Louverture. I'm feeling like I'm pronouncing that completely wrong, but I know I will put that name on the screen because I know who I'm talking about. But there was definitely like nods to like him and like his revolution, the Haitian Revolution, and I just feel like with like these nods of history, with like the influence of like the food and like everything, like the community aspect, like I just wanted a different ending, and I just feel like the ending started to lean more into like the political things, and it was just kind of like an unsatisfying ending because with like so much of like the oppression and like the slurs that she was being called, like I just wanted a different ending than what we got. And I'm not going to spoil the ending, but it was just not what I wanted. I'm trying to be very vague, but yeah, like I just feel like this could have ended very differently and I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. Not saying that I didn't enjoy it, like I still gave it like 3.5 stars because I did like the author's writing and I would read more by this author. But yeah, I was just disappointed. Just yeah, disappointed. And the last one that I have is The Last Fairy Godmother, Wishless, which is a middle grade that I decided to read because I was trying to complete something for the hardest reading challenge to ever do, and I needed a book for October. And I found this one at Galley for like the read now, and I was like, okay, cool, I'll read this now. So this story follows Max, who is the last fairy godmother in her realm. of fairies. And she ends up going to like the human realm in order to complete the wish, or the wish that this one girl named Amara absolutely needs in order to like save the entire realm or whatever. And this book was also short. It was only like 182 pages. I know it was less than 200 pages. And so my biggest complaint with this story is that I think, just like in One Night, One Bite, it was trying to do a lot of things in one book, but it wasn't long enough. And I think some of the elements definitely could have been like taken out. And I will say that like I liked some parts of it. Like I think that the way that the elements were like interwoven in the story felt very disjointed, and it does all like connect towards the end. But I think that there was like elements with like her grandfather and just that relationship. There was a relationship with Amara, the girl that she's supposed to be granting the wish for. There was a relationship with some random guy that came very plot conveniently, that I honestly can't even remember his name. And then there was like the big bad villain, and then there was just like so much, and I was just like, I know it all connected, but I think some of the elements could have been introduced a little bit later. And maybe I'm thinking as like a writer, which is very hard for me not to do when I am reading a book and I'm feeling like I'm not enjoying it. So I definitely feel like I am probably being a little bit more critical than like a lot of other people will be, because like I said, like I think this was a fine story, but I definitely think that some of the things could have been more cohesive, and I just wanted like a little bit more from like each of the elements that were introduced. Like I wanted the relationship between the grandfather and Max to be explored a little bit more, especially because it wasn't necessarily like a great relationship. He talks to her in a way that like pissed me off and made me very sad for her. But I feel like there was supposed to be more to that relationship. And then there was like this whole mystery with like her mother that I think is probably going to be explored a little bit more in like further books, because there's also the theme of like how seeming like one realm could be detrimental to like another one. And I just feel like those complicated like themes of like friendship, of being good versus like bad, and like just the complexities of like all of these things, it just wasn't delivered because there just wasn't enough time for it to be like delved into. And I'm not saying that it needed to be like very complicated, because this is for like a middle grade audience, but I think that it could definitely be explored in like a middle grade way. But there was just so much going on that none of it went into depth, and all of those elements, like it just, yeah, like I said, felt very disjointed. So I gave this one like 3.25 stars, and yeah, it was okay. I don't know, I'm kind of curious for the next one, especially because like I did like following Max, even though she is definitely a child, but like I'm very curious with this world, and I feel like there is going to be a sequel. So yeah, 3.25 stars. But that wraps up all of the books that I recently read. I really hope that you have enjoyed it. If you have read any of these books, I would definitely love to know in the comments. And if you don't want to do that, maybe leave like a fairy emoji for the Wishless, the last fairy godmother. And yeah, I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!